You want to dominate? You want to control people's decisions, their emotions, even their desires? Want to make them obey, follow, do exactly what you want, without them even realizing they've been played? If your answer's yes, this video is the most important one you'll ever watch in your life. Right here, I'm gonna spill the darkest, most hidden, and most effective secrets of the human mind. Secrets that were laid bare over 500 years ago by one guy. A guy who had the guts to tell it like it is, to rip off the mask of good intentions and show, no holds barred, how you dominate, how you manipulate, how you seize absolute power. But I'm going further, because by the end of this video, you're gonna have something even more powerful in your hands. You're gonna know how to use these principles to make any woman do whatever you ask without her even clocking why. That's right. She's gonna act, want, and give in, thinking she's the one calling the shots, when in reality, you're the one in control. Secret 1. Better to be feared than loved. The power of fear. At some point in your life, you believed love was enough, that if you were good, virtuous, loyal, people would respond with respect, affection, loyalty. But Machiavelli didn't buy that illusion. He tore through the veil of good intentions and dropped a brutal truth. It's better to be feared than loved if you can't be both. And here's the first secret for anyone who wants to dominate, to control, to impose themselves. Because love is fragile. Love depends on gratitude, memory, and other people's willingness to recognize the good you've done. And Machiavelli knew, like few others, that people are ungrateful, fickle, deceitful, cowardly in the face of danger, greedy for gain. Today they admire you, tomorrow they forget you. Today they love you, tomorrow they ditch you. Love is like a flame. It can warm, but it also fizzles out with the first gust of wind. It can be strong, but it depends on the other person. And if you want to dominate, you can't depend on anybody. That's why fear. Fear is a chain that binds tighter than any affection. Fear paralyzes. Fear submits. Fear stops betrayals from rising, rivals from rebelling, allies from wavering. And Machiavelli didn't say this out of cruelty, but out of pure, cold, clinical realism. He saw the world for what it is, not what we wish it was. And he saw those who leaned only on love crumbled, but those who inspired fear endured. Fear doesn't need reciprocation. Fear doesn't run dry over time. Fear doesn't weaken with absence. It creeps into the depths of the soul. It takes root in the most primal instinct of self-preservation. And here, Machiavelli gives us the formula. If you can't be both loved and feared, always choose fear. And look, it's not about being cruel for no reason. It's not about spreading blind terror that sparks hatred and rebellion. Machiavelli warns, the ruler must be feared, but never hated. Hatred, that's a whole other beast. Hatred breeds a thirst for revenge, conspiracies, pent-up resentment. Hatred doesn't paralyze, it mobilizes, and if you want to dominate, you can't stir up hatred. You got to be feared with respect, not with bitterness. So dominance is about balance, the delicate art of showing just enough strength to keep things in check, but not so much cruelty that it sparks revolt. Fear needs to be clean, effective, strategic. It should loom like a shadow, always there, but not suffocating. The example? How many leaders fell because they became hated? How many kings, generals, CEOs crashed and burned by going overboard with brutality? But how many held on to their thrones, their empires, their influence, by cultivating just the right amount of fear, the respect enforced by strength? That's the silent strength Machiavelli recommends. Not the idealized, romantic, shaky love, but the stable, solid, lasting fear. And you? How many times in your life did you trust in love and get betrayed? How many times did you reach out expecting reciprocation and got ingratitude instead? How many times did you think being liked was enough, only to realize being respected or even feared would have been better? That's the lesson. Those who dominate don't wait to be loved. Those who dominate make themselves feared, and the fear they inspire keeps their power safe. While the weak who lean on love collapse with the first gust of wind. Machiavelli wraps this lesson with a bitter but true observation. Men have less scruple in offending one who is beloved than one who is feared. Why? Because love is a fragile pact, easily broken, but fear holds, locks, binds. That's the essence of dominance, not depending on others, but conditioning others. And this lesson, more than ever, applies to your life, your business, your relationships. Want to dominate? Don't get suckered by love. Learn to inspire fear, but remember, never hatred, just fear. The fear that keeps others on their toes and you in charge. Secret 2. Fake virtue, but act with cold precision. The world's a stage, and if you want to dominate, you can't ever forget that. Machiavelli, with his raw, ruthless take on human nature, hands us one of the key lessons for anyone chasing power. And for anyone who wants to keep it. Everyone sees what you seem to be. Few get what you really are. That's the core of the second lesson. You don't need to be virtuous. Just look like you are. You don't need to be good, honest, fair. Just project that image, because people don't see the real you. They settle for the surface. They judge by appearances. They buy into what they can see, hear, feel on the surface. And the guy who wants to dominate, who wants to lead, can't afford to be transparent. He's got to be a mask, a carefully crafted figure that inspires trust, respect, admiration. While behind it, he moves his pieces with cold calculation, precision, and if needed, cruelty. Machiavelli invites us to ditch the naivety, to see that the world doesn't belong to the authentic, not to the honest, but to those who can fake it with perfection. Power doesn't belong to the good, but to those who seem good while doing whatever it takes to win. Look, if you're truly fair, honest, kind, but don't come off that way. Nobody's going to trust you. Your image will be weak. Your enemies will crush you, and the crowd will disrespect you. On the flip side, if you're ruthless, relentless, manipulative, but know how to craft the right image, you'll be revered, respected, followed. What matters isn't the essence, it's the appearance. Machiavelli knew this. He lived in a time of political betrayals, palace conspiracies, courts full of guys who, in public, showed honor. But behind closed doors, they schemed, poisoned, killed, and he saw the winners weren't the purest. They were the ones best at seeming pure, while doing what others didn't have the guts to do. This lesson is bitter, but it's freeing. If you want to dominate, you got to learn to fake virtue like a pro. Show compassion, even when you're merciless. Flash mercy, even when you've already decided to take out a rival. Talk about justice, even when you're bending the rules in your favor. Defend freedom, even when you're building invisible chains. And more. Machiavelli teaches us that no matter how honest and fair you are, there'll be moments when, to protect your power or grab, you'll need to go against those values. You'll need to lie, betray, deceive, and sometimes eliminate. And here's the thing, if you're a slave to virtue, if you can't act against your values, you're not fit to dominate. You're not fit to lead. You're not fit to survive in the real world, because the world doesn't reward the virtuous. It rewards the effective. And being effective sometimes just means being immoral, but looking moral. That's the theater of power. And look, it's not about being a hypocrite in the cheap sense, but about being a strategist, an artist of appearances. Those who dominate get the power of images, symbols, calculated gestures. The ruler, the leader, the seducer, the manipulator. They're all masters of this game. They get that every word, every smile, every move is a piece on the chessboard of appearances. And while everyone's distracted by the show, behind the scenes, the real decisions get made, alliances are forged, betrayals are sealed, and power gets locked in. That's why Machiavelli warns us, a prince who wants to keep power must learn not to be good, but also he's got to know how to seem good, and that maybe is the toughest skill of all, because it's not enough to fake it. You got to be convincing. You got to embody virtue so perfectly that nobody doubts you, that everyone buys it, and that way they accept your leadership, your influence, your dominance, and you. How many times have you been fooled by appearances? How many times did you think someone was virtuous, only to find out too late that behind the mask there was just cold calculation? And more importantly, how many times have you faked it? How many times have you hidden your true intentions behind a carefully crafted image? That's the core of the game. And if you want to dominate, you gotta embrace it. You got to become a master of it. There's no room for naive authenticity in the world of those who command. Absolute sincerity is a luxury that the strong can't afford. The strong use sincerity as a tool, not a rule. They show the truth when it works for them and hide it when it threatens them. That's Machiavelli's second lesson, the most dangerous and the most necessary. Those who dominate aren't the good ones, but the ones who seem good, while acting with the cold precision of someone who knows in the end what matters is winning. And you ready to wear that mask, or you gonna keep believing that being real is enough, when in reality, what matters is seeming real? Think about it and get ready, because the next lesson goes even deeper. We're gonna talk about how to combine the two greatest weapons of the dominator, the cunning of the fox and the strength of the lion, the perfect balance between manipulation and raw power. You ready? Then keep going, because only those who master both natures survive in the game of power. Secret 3. Be cunning like a fox and strong like a lion. There are two kinds of power, the power of strength and the power of cunning. And Machiavelli was maybe the first to say, clear as day, the ruler must know how to be a fox and a lion. This is the third lesson for anyone who wants to dominate people, to command, control, subdue, because there are moments when brute strength gets the job done, moments when crushing the enemy is the only option, and if you don't know how to be a lion, you get eaten. But there are other moments when strength would be a mistake, when rushing in head first just shows weakness, stirs up hidden enemies, moments when the real win comes from cunning, from deception, from the invisible move that sneaks in, corrupts, misleads. And if you don't know how to be a fox, you get tangled in other people's traps. Machiavelli knew. The powerful men, the kings, the princes, the generals, the ones who truly dominated, weren't just strong, weren't just cunning, they were both. The lion stands for strength, violence, the ability to impose yourself through sheer presence, direct threats, the terror you inspire. The fox stands for cunning, the ability to dodge traps, manipulate, deceive, win without spilling blood. And Machiavelli writes, the lion can't protect itself from traps. The fox can't defend itself from wolves, so you got to be a fox to spot the traps and a lion to scare off the wolves. That's the core. If you rely only on strength, you're predictable, you're brute, you're easily outsmarted by sharper minds. If you rely only on cunning, you're fragile, vulnerable to the violence you can't withstand. That's why, if you want to dominate, you got to be both. And look, in your life, how many times were you too much of a lion and acted with brutality and lost because you didn't see the trap closing in? And how many times were you too much of a fox and tried to deceive, manipulate, but when it came time to show strength, you hesitated and got devoured. This lesson is about balance. Dominating isn't just about being strong or just being cunning. It's knowing when to be one and when to be the other. When the enemy's weak, when the opposition's scattered, when overwhelming force will seal the deal. Be a lion, attack, impose yourself, scare, break resistance before it even forms. But when the enemy's powerful, when there are hidden alliances, when brute force would be suicide, be a fox, pretend, dodge, deceive, sabotage from within, corrupt, dissolve resistance without them noticing, until nothing's left but ruins. And then, if you want, be a lion and finish it. This lesson is a call to strategic smarts. Machiavelli, with his brutal clarity, knew the world's a battlefield, and winning takes more than strength. It takes a sharp read of the terrain, the enemies, the allies, the circumstances, and he knew. If you only know how to be one thing, you'll get destroyed by your own predictability, because the world's full of wolves and traps, of strong men who crush and cunning, men who ensnare. If you can't crush, you'll get crushed. If you can't ensnare, you'll get ensnared. That's why Machiavelli teaches, learn from nature, study the lion, study the fox, and become both. Only then can you navigate the chaos of power. Only then can you dominate others. Only then can you survive the betrayals, the conspiracies, the brutal shifts that always threaten those at the top. And look, this lesson goes beyond politics. It applies to business, to relationships, to life. How many times did you need to be strong and weren't? How many times did you need to be cunning and were naive? How many times was your weakness just not being able to switch skins? Machiavelli invites us to be shapeshifters, to not get stuck in one form, but to be flexible, adaptable, multifaceted. The real strength is being whatever's needed when it's needed. And that's why Machiavelli doesn't write a manual for brutes or a guide for manipulators. He writes a playbook for complete dominators, for those who get that victory takes strength, but also cunning, that it takes brutality, but also finesse. And you ready to be a lion when it's time to crush? You ready to be a fox when it's time to ensnare? Or you gonna stay stuck in one form? And because of that, vulnerable, think hard, because those who dominate master themselves, master their forms, their masks, their weapons. And that is the third lesson. Learn to be a fox, learn to be a lion, and become untamable. Secret 4, never trust anyone fully. The art of strategic distrust. You ever been betrayed? Ever trusted someone completely and got stabbed in the back? Ever given your loyalty, your vulnerability, and in return got scorn, abandonment, or worse, betrayal? If so, then you've already learned the hard way what Machiavelli turned into a universal principle. Never trust anyone fully. This is the fourth lesson for anyone who wants to dominate, and maybe the toughest one of all, because trusting feels good. It's human, it's instinctive. We want to believe, we want to lean on someone, we want to let go. But if you want to dominate, you can't afford that luxury. Machiavelli, with his razor-sharp clarity, reminds us that people are fickle, ungrateful, deceitful, cowardly in the face of danger, greedy for gain. He doesn't sugarcoat, he doesn't fantasize. He observes and lays out human nature as it is, and he sees that if you trust too much, if you trust blindly, you're doomed to fall, because people change. Their interests drive them, their loyalties are shaky, and their gratitude short-lived. Today, an ally smiles. Tomorrow, they stab. Today, a friend swears loyalty. Tomorrow, they scheme. Today, a partner says they've got your back. Tomorrow, they're siding with your enemy. And if you don't get this, if you don't live with this awareness, you'll always be vulnerable, you'll always be caught off guard, you'll always be dominated. That's why Machiavelli teaches princes must distrust those who were once enemies and not blindly trust even those who are friends today. Full trust is a weakness that exposes you, that leaves you open, that invites betrayal. But it's not about living in paranoia. It's not about distrusting everyone blindly, like you're scared of your own shadow. No, Machiavelli's talking about strategic distrust. It's the clear-headed awareness that in human relationships, everything can change, that alliances are temporary, that loyalty is always conditional, that nobody, absolutely nobody, is trustworthy forever. And so those who dominate keep their allies, but watch them. Welcome their friends, but test them, make deals, but expect they might get broken. And look, it's not just the obvious enemies who threaten you. Sometimes the real danger comes from those who seem the most loyal, because the declared enemy, you see them, you know them, you prepare for them. But the friend can turn into the invisible traitor, the silent conspirator, the snake warmed in your own chest. And that's why, if you want to dominate, you can never trust fully. You always got to keep a layer of protection, a veil of distance, a safe space where others can't reach. You always got to be ready for the possibility of betrayal. And more than that, you got to anticipate betrayal, spot the signs, act before it's too late. Machiavelli saw, through history, rulers toppled, kings assassinated, generals overthrown. Why? Because they trusted too much, because they let their guard down, because they believed in words and ignored human nature. He knew power's a dirty game, and if you want to stay on top, you gotta play by all the rules, including the rule of distrust. And look, it's not about never trusting, but about never trusting fully, about trusting, but always with a catch, about making alliances, but always knowing they could break, about keeping relationships, but never laying it all bare. Because if you bear it all, if you give everything, if you reveal everything, you're done. The dominator always keeps a secret, always keeps an ace up their sleeve, always keeps an escape route, and that way, they avoid being blindsided, they avoid being toppled, they avoid being destroyed. This is a tough lesson because it goes against our natural urge to trust, to belong, to let go. But if you want to dominate, you can't follow urges, you follow necessity, and the necessity of power is constant vigilance, is protection against betrayal, is the awareness that no matter how loyal someone seems, they might not be. And you? How many times did you trust and get hurt? How many times did you give and lose? How many times did you ignore the signs and get betrayed? Machiavelli's calling us to wake up, to ditch the romantic illusions, to realize that if you want to dominate, you gotta always distrust. And more than that, you gotta be able to fake trust to get what you need, but always keep deep down the cold clarity of someone who knows that at any moment they could be betrayed. And that way, you stay protected, you stay sharp, you stay in power. This is the fourth lesson, the lesson of strategic distrust. Those who dominate trust, but never fully, give, but never everything, yield, but never without an escape route. In the next lesson, we're going to dive even deeper into the game of appearances and see how manipulating appearances is the key to absolute control. You ready? Then keep going. Because if you don't master appearances, you'll always end up dominated by other people's illusions. In this game, there are only two kinds of people: those who dominate and those who get dominated. Choose which side you want to be on. See you in the next video, and until then, stay sharp, stay ruthless, and stay in control.